And Quasar, do you want to share anything today about the 42 epochs?
Maybe, but not right now. I'm multitasking, so maybe in a bit.
Okay, cool. Great. Well, hi everyone. It's Tuesday. It's the 13th of June, 2023. And this is the time that we usually start the weekly Gimbalabs Playground meeting. But we're going to take the next 3 months off from Playground and really repurpose this time for just a chance to get together and learn and build in public. So we're going to call this experiment Gimbalabs Carnival. I don't know. I associate the summer months with going to the carnival, playing a bunch of dumb games, maybe riding a Ferris wheel, bumping into people unexpectedly and having some of those kind of really, really wonderful conversations. And I think carnivals can be spaces of emergence, right? Little temporary societies form and disperse, even for just a few minutes. So that's what we're hoping to do here. And I thought I might just jump right into providing an overview of how it's going to work. But Q, the reason I asked about 42 epochs, I do want to share that you've been really thoughtful with the significance of different numbers and all that. And today happens to be my 42nd birthday. So it's kind of funny how poetic everything works out. So here we are. I'm told it's the secret to the universe. I'll keep you posted on how that experiment is going. So thanks for spending the time together today. All right, I'm going to share screen. It looks good. It's this one, right? Okay. So just there's a little quick overview here on the Gimbalabs website, and we have a link, gimbalabs.com/carnival 2023. And it's a lot of what I just shared. Taking a break from the well-established structure of Playground, where a different presenter drops by every week to share either something they're working on or an idea they might have. And we have a focused 90-minute or so conversation. For the summer, I was wondering if we could reclaim that time for building, for catching up. I know that I feel really thirsty right now, just to have some maker blocks this summer where I can sit and focus on learning something or trying to build something. And it feels like a really good opportunity to come together and do this together. So the way it works is there's a Miro board that we'll look at in just a minute. And the way to participate is either to propose an open space, to provide a space for one of those ideas to meet up with each other, or if you don't have a proposal for a space, just to express interest in it and show up. And I'm using this term open space in a formal way. This is a meeting structure with a long history of really working well for groups of any size. And the way it works is really simple. Anybody can suggest a topic for a space, and then anybody can jump in and join that space. And there's 4 principles. Sometimes these are called rules when we create those spaces. And basically, it all comes down to whatever happens is the only thing that could have happened, right? Whoever comes, the universe sent those people there, right? Whatever happens, that's what happened. And that's how we do what we can in the time we have. Starting time is whatever it is, it's the right time. And when it's over, it's over. So I hope that these spaces can give us a chance to take risks. I know that I'm really excited to embarrass myself over the next few months, just kind of, showing what I look like when I read documentation for the first time. I'm trying to make sense of it. That's really my priority for being here. And like it says here, we have this opportunity to learn and build together and in public. So before I jump into the Miro, does anybody have any high-level questions about how this is going to pan out this summer?
I'm hoping to see more projects that have very, very similar goals and outcomes actually collaborate and start working together on things. Excited to see that.
Yeah, that really resonates, right? There's so much work happening, and sometimes it's hard to know if what we're doing is repeating on what anybody else is doing, or if somebody else is already doing it better. That would be a great outcome if we start to see more connections. Any other hopes for the next few months or questions?
Well, I think before you started the recording, I was saying I'm glad that this is happening for two reasons. One, there is an idea that I've been sort of chasing Jonathan down on for us to do a little proof of concept, seeing if it's even like a feasibility stint or hackathon or whatever, just to see if it's feasible and explore what it could look like. So this seems like a great placeholder for us to just jump into that. But also just this idea of hunkering down for a few weeks or months and trying to build something is great, and making me feel better about saying no to go to Edinburgh. Because while I want to go to Edinburgh, I'm gonna wait to the last day to actually RSVP just in case. I don't know. The universe makes it possible. But I also, there's just so much to do, so much building, so much to learn, so much to test out. And why it would be great to hang out with people and hang out in Edinburgh and get to meet other people. I got to do some building too. And then there's Dubai coming up. And I know for sure there will be a lot more community there. So yeah, it'd be good to have a space or at least an energy of like, hey, let's build, let's learn, let's have a focused development time this summer. I'm grateful for that.
Thanks, Darlington. So keep questions coming as we jump into this. I'm sure other questions will come up. And so you can see this Miro board is embedded in the page, but that can be a little limiting. So what I'm going to do is switch screen shares here, and I think it just logged me in. I'm going to switch screen shares and really focus on this Miro for the rest of the meeting. But we do have this link right here. I'll drop it in the chat, just in case you want to invite anybody to. Oh, and thanks for, I'm just seeing the birthday wishes. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. All right, let me switch over to Miro. The direct link to this board it's here. I'll drop that in the chat. Okay, so I also like looking at the calendar and just seeing, okay, look, it's a finite amount of time, right? There's after today, there's 12 Tuesdays that we'll run this structure for. A few of these are already out for me. So for example, yeah, on the 11th, I am going to make that trip to Edinburgh for the final 1694 conference. I hope that everybody here has plans to take at least a Tuesday off this summer. And so this is a structure that will hopefully also adapt to just our different schedules and kind of how how sometimes things might slow down a little bit over these next few months. So we have a little template right here. This is an open space card. And there's just a few sections I want to orient everybody to. In the top box right here, there's a topic box where you can propose anything for the topic of a space. It could just be the name of a tool. You could say, I want to understand how Ogmios works, for example, right? Or it might be a question you have, or maybe there's some experiment. And this can be software oriented or not, right? If you're interested in something, you are invited to propose anything as a topic. And then it's up to us to provide a link to where meetings will happen. Okay, when I'm here, I'll use this link because this is my Zoom account to host this, one meeting on Tuesdays. But anytime that there is a space, the expectation is that someone provides a unique link that people can come to this Miro board and find, so they know where to go and can join that space at that time. A date, one way to set the date is to move it to a given date box down here. And so the intention is that any given date might have several open spaces for that time. And if we start to have a lot of ideas, we can start to sort them out into the future. But this is kind of the way that we can think about scheduling each of these things. But just in case it's helpful, you can drop a date here. And if you like this structure, you can always propose just to have a space really any time of the week, if that feels helpful to you. Finally, if you do propose a topic, please be sure to write your name in the proposer box. Now, you might also choose to be the facilitator, okay? But you don't have to. If you want to propose a topic, but you don't really feel comfortable facilitating a session about that topic, you can leave the facilitator box open, and that would be an invitation for somebody else to say, oh, that's a really good idea. Yeah, I'd be happy to facilitate a session on that. And finally, in a similar way, if you're just interested in attending, this is your way of just stating your intentions, and even you can think of this as your vote for a session. You can express your interest about an upcoming session, and that way whoever proposed it will have their idea validated and will know that it feels like a good idea to do that. Sometimes we will express interest in a session before choosing a date, right? So I might have a few different ideas for things that I would like to work on this summer, but no real preferences on what I prioritize. So seeing interest from other people would help me set those priorities. Any questions about the open space card that I just introduced right here? Okay. I used the grouping feature in Miro to create these. So you have to choose a cell and then kind of like double click on it to make sure the cursor shows up, but then you can start typing in a box. Okay, and the same thing with the sticky notes down here. If I double click on a sticky, eventually the cursor shows up and I can write my name on a sticky.
And James, forgive
yep,
me, I turned
no.
I turned the card into a template over here, so that's why it's a little bit different than what we're used to.
Does that mean we can add one?
I think so. I was looking to export it to a different board and work on it, so that's why I did
Great.
that.
Oh yeah, if that's working, that's awesome. Let me know if there's like permissions necessary to make that work, but that's great. So the process I just outlined is here once again, and we'll post this recording on that Gimbalabs page for the 2023 Carnival. So people can use just this segment of the video as documentation. And hopefully this little step-by-step process is a sufficient onboarding tool for anybody showing up and trying to figure out what's going on here. But we might realize that this how it works part needs to be refined. And so if you have any insights, feel free to drop sticky notes on here, and we can just make sure that this is clear enough for people when they show up, sometime weeks from now. Step 1, like I just described, propose a session by filling out a card. An example might look like this. I might say something like, hey, I want to read the Hydra documentation and build an example use case that could eventually be used in a Plutus PBL course. I can provide a link for that to happen. I can say for now that the date is to be determined because I'm looking for how many people are interested. And for now, I'm just the proposer. I might give it a few days and allow somebody else to say, oh, cool, yeah, I would love to facilitate that. And that's this message right here. If you really do want to facilitate the session you're proposing, feel free to drop your name in both boxes right away. But if you're having any second thoughts, we just leave that option open. Finally, to schedule a carnival space, you can just drag the card down to the dates that I showed a moment ago. And on the scheduled date, just go to that link, go to that meeting room and see what happens. Remember those rules of open spaces, right? Whoever shows up are the right people. Whatever happens was meant to happen. The start time is exactly when it was supposed to start. And when it's over, it's over. So for today, it's just a matter of throwing ideas out there. I think there's all sorts of stuff that we might choose to go deep into, but my intention is not even to rush into that today, and just to be ready next Tuesday to do my first carnival session about some topic that I'm really interested in, and maybe you feel the same. So the next two things I'd like to do is once again open it up to any questions you have or ideas you have. And then collaboratively, if people want to start just comparing notes on ideas for a space that you'd like to do, that's what we have up here, is kind of just a bunch of empty cards that are ready for us to use them and start adding some topics to the board. So we don't really need to distinguish between Q&A and sharing ideas. What's everybody got in mind?
So for this, how does the live streaming part work? Is that all going somewhere, or that recordings get submitted somewhere? What's the such?
Great question. Yeah, I recognize that was, we haven't, there's not really a plan for that yet. So I have a Zoom account and a Restream account that I happen to use for just events within Gimbalabs, and that subscription saves a lot of time. But we don't have the ability for multi-streaming at this point. So what if we say that when a session starts, anybody who's there can choose whether they want to record it, and everybody is invited to post those recordings anywhere they want, including the Gimbalabs YouTube. I'm happy to make anybody here an editor of the Gimbalabs YouTube channel. So that can just give anybody the ability to upload videos, make playlists, etc. I think a bunch of people here already have that access. So just be sure to ask for that. And if you do run a session, it's up to you if you want to record it. Does that sound okay? And I'll add a little FAQ and some additional documentation on this board for questions like that, because I think that's worth having. So I'll do one of these as an example. I already used it over to the side, but one thing I'm really excited to do is build something with Hydra. You know, I know that we're supposed to build for solving problems, right? But sometimes when a tool is brand new, you just got to play with it for the sake of playing with it. And I've read those docs a few times over the last few months, and they've gotten better each time. It's really cool how that's rolling out. We are aware that Hydra is available to use on mainnet. For anybody who's aware of how reference scripts work, there's a published transaction hash. That's the reference script of the current iteration of Hydra. So we could just start playing with it on pre-prod and see what we can get it to do. And that's something I would be just thrilled to spend a couple hours really soon in this space doing. And so my next step would be to add a link here. I can use this one in this case. I won't announce a date yet because I want to gauge interest and see if better ideas come up. And in this case, I'm happy to facilitate this one, right? So that's an example. And now when people see this, if you are interested, you could add your name to one of these sticky notes, and that would show us if we have a critical mass of people. But yeah, along those lines. And
Do you have an
again,
application in mind? Sorry.
you know, I actually do. We've been seeding the Plutus PBL course with examples of things that will be better with Hydra. And so we could absolutely relate this to, for example, the entire course, anybody who's working through it, you mint a token in the very first module. And then throughout the course, you make commitments to learning the next thing. And over time, you build up some contributor datum that shows what you've achieved in the course. The thing is, who's going to pay for those transactions on mainnet? And that's going to get expensive. Just to work through the course, if you make 8 commitments, and then those commitments are finished 8 times, that's 16 transactions. And we have the fee because we're using reference scripts. We have the fee down below 0.4 ADA, which I think is pretty good, but it's still, those are still relatively expensive transactions because there's data involved, right? There's updates to metadata and that kind of thing. So what are we looking at? That's, 7 or 8 ADA for somebody to move through the course and build out their contributor datum. Those funds have to come from somewhere. If we're talking about delivering a free course and maybe 100 people work through it, now 700, 800 ADA has got to come from somewhere. It would be better if this course, if all this stuff happened in a Hydra head, for example.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
But first and foremost, I just want to get it working. I remember the experience of building a valid transaction for the first time with Cardano CLI, for example, and being like, oh my gosh, it worked. It finally worked. I just want to have that experience together with getting a Hydra node up and running. What else? Feel free to get weird. What's something that's been in your backlog for a long time, or something that is out there, but you haven't had a chance to really learn how it works? Yeah, I want to go to that one.
Well, I for sure want to spin up this fancy new Catalyst testnet I keep hearing about. but that's not that weird.
We could make it weird.
I am so there. Tell me where.
That sounds awesome.
Well, I mean,
I would love to do that.
the thing with that testnet is supposed to be plug and play. So in theory, I suppose you could have something like a social media activity that then generates that ballot thing. Because the value, the big giant value of the Catalyst infrastructure, I imagine, is to take advantage of all that stuff, the UI, the registration, the snapshot, the voting. At least I hope that's what it is. So if you could just plug in some questions, and maybe some addresses or something, or like, anyways, like those kinds of experiments. And then the thing is up and people can go vote. Could be fun.
Yeah, I was thinking about I'd love to have a Catalyst testnet that was vote power was in gimbals, something like that.
Right.
And actually,
Yeah.
and try out everybody who should see gimbals, part of the community, the builders, and actually see what that vote, turn out on some of these, and what any new proposals as well. We could see how that turns out. That'd be fun.
The thing I was thinking of earlier too, and that this one is hopefully sooner rather than later because we're hoping to get a Fund 10 budget in. But with the folks over at Swarm, to get a centralized, there's that nice word, a central source that people can submit events to, in some agreed upon, format or structure or something. So discovering Cardano events won't be limited to going to Discord servers or knowing which websites to go to, much like the way, all the transaction goes one place right now. If you want to discover how much gimbal activity there is on chain, you don't have to go to any weird ass Discord, right? You can just filter out with the policy ID. Something like that for events.
I love that. What came up in an earlier conversation today was the need for just agreeing, upon the schema of the metadata that helps us communicate what's happening in smaller spaces.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Nori was on one of those conversations and challenged that group to start dog feeding some of the philosophies we have around decentralization. And I don't know who's doing it in the space yet, but it would be cool to see what it would take to run a Cardano dApp on like something like IPFS and like store all the stuff on there. That could be it.
I've been playing with a tool called Noster with a couple other teammates, which is it is like a layer 1 chain, and we could look at those docs briefly, but it's pretty cool. It provides kind of the back end, the blockchain like back end of social media applications.
So like backend for like things like middlewares and data storage and networking, stuff like that, or what kind of backend?
Mostly just the part that exchanges what would essentially be like a message on a social media app. So
Okay.
there's one data type on Nostr. It's called an event, and an event
Mhm.
can have a message in it. But that could be a really fun thing for us to look at together.
Right. Yeah,
And
because the thing with these, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
You finish because mine might be a tandem.
I see these things as connected and maybe even connected to Hydra. Like, for example, maybe we could try to build in a Hydra head just a list of events, right? Throw a bunch of UTXOs in that head, each of which has cheap datum on it that represents events, and maybe compare that to a Nostr-based approach and see which one we like more. In both cases,
Right.
where these would be data sources that can be used by multiple front ends, and that idea has always been really compelling to me. Right, just whether if the term headless DApp is helpful to people, I think that kind of points in this direction. But right, if we had ecosystem events in a public permissionless data store, and then we just played with different ways to present that data, that could be a really interesting example to set.
Right. Yeah. So the Hydra doesn't mean that um so it's long running, but I think maybe right now one of the thing is people can come and go, right? You have to either be in, and if one person leave, everybody has to leave.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
But I think
good
that part is
question.
what
Yeah.
they're working on. Yeah.
That's one thing
right.
I'm not sure. Like, right, if one person wants to leave, does everybody have to leave?
Right.
There's two different ways to interact with it, right? One is as a signatory to that head, and another is just as a passive participant. But I need to see those things in action to really understand it.
Yeah, maybe I should tell Matt about this. I think Matt put something in the Gimbalabs Discord recently about some interesting way to stage transactions. And he and I were chatting about it, and I was like, this is the kind of stuff you have to feel your way through to really know if it's possible or not. Like just thinking about it really doesn't do it justice. But he wanted to, maybe I was saying this link to this carnival with the date on there. He wanted to get a transaction, get a UTXO that was pretty big, and stage like a series of transactions that at some point split that up and then submit it all at once. And I think the rub is, how do you go from one UTXO to more than one UTXO that's pre-staged without without putting it on chain first to get outputs? Like, can you pre-stage your outputs? I guess maybe. Anyways,
Thanks for
yeah,
that
it seems
reminder.
like
Yeah, I just took his topic and threw it here. That would be a great,
perfect.
because there's a few different approaches to that. And even if if we had 2 hours, we might not fully build that whole thing, but at least we could look at what the architecture would need to be. And there are some tools that definitely help with this. So that'd be a really satisfying thing to look at together.
Right.
Hey, James, maybe you can answer this for me, but with our jukebox player, we got the the token gating part to work, where you buy an album token and it accesses the music, and that's pretty straightforward. But for the music streaming part, the microtransactions, pay per play, it's just too expensive right now to pay per play a song. And so we're thinking that Randall has dismissed this a little bit about Hydra, but I'm thinking that if I understand how Hydra works, wouldn't it be that the user could open up a tab, open up a head, I guess, and then play all the songs he or she wants in this head, and then only when they close the tab do they incur that transaction on the chain. Could that be an application of Hydra? Again, I was dismissed, so that's why I'm kind of like even walking,
Yeah.
treading
No,
lightly here.
I think there's something there. Like I don't know exactly. I think it could be a useful tool, but what would the best architecture be, right? Is it for individual listeners to open a head every time they want to listen? Could it be that every artist has a head, or every label has a head, or maybe does every album need its own head? I don't know. I'm excited to look at it and figure out if there's some, like what's the right scope for that head to handle.
Could you additionally, just thoughts here, the platform, I don't know how decentralized the app is meant to be, but the platform could pay the Hydra fees and then have a platform fee, maybe $5 or $1 a month or something. And then all the transactions are wrapped up in the Hydra head. And then the platform itself pays very minimal platform fees itself.
Well, we want it to be decentralized 100%, right? But that is interesting. Obviously, if I'm just trying to get the thing to work, and whether decentralization is the key to that or impedes that, we'll have to make a decision then.
That's a fun high level question to kind of carry through the next few months. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Here as food for thought, let me jump over here. Oh, I'm just going through the chat too. Yeah, Q, you can add as many topics as you want. Metadata is on folks' mind. Oh, Matthias is going to the gate. Nice. Yeah, and Quasar, that's right. I didn't realize they had set up a 1694 test net in the IOG server, but that's great to know. And if anybody's not part of that server yet, I encourage you to join it. There's a lot you can keep track of. Just for fun, we'll do like just a light exploration for today. But yeah, so this is the Noster website. I think this tagline is awesome with a chance of working. It's kind of different from the certainty of a lot of other Web3 projects that you tend to hear about. But yeah, and then they say the goal, right? Open protocol that enables a censorship-resistant global social network. And this is the whole thing. I mentioned there's one data type, it's an event. Every event has an ID hash. This should look familiar if you ever looked at transactions on Cardano before, and a signature. And then you've got 5 fields in between. There's a kind, pub key, a timestamp, the content of some message itself. You can think of this as like the tweet. And then tags can be used in all sorts of interesting ways. But what's really neat is they use NIPs, just like we use SIPs. And so you can read through the current Noster improvement proposals. Number one, oh, right, I thought there were more here. There's a lot more than were just on my screen. Number one is just a description of the protocol itself. And then you see how there's all these other numbers sequentially from 1 up and up. All of these map to the kind field right here in the event structure. So after an idea from a NIP is implemented, you can reference what NIP applies to your event by using the integer defining that NIP right here. This is kind of a cool high-level structure. But before I keep going with just screwing around with this, any thoughts or questions just based on what I initially shared there? In the chat, Quasar asked, do we need to establish a domain or domains? And the answer is yes. It's not so much a domain as you set up a relay. Okay, so you would either connect to existing nodes or relays, or you would set up your own. And if you're getting started, just like with Cardano, when you're just getting started, maybe you use a light wallet and you're not really contributing to running the network, you're just using it. But at a certain time, some people decide, yeah, I want to run a node as well, right? And maybe they run a passive node, a relay node, before running a stake pool. But then eventually you can also start running a whole stake pool. So kind of similar here. And when you build an application with Noster, you specify the one or more relay nodes that you're going to connect to first. Oh, right. Got it.
But thank you for the answer. It applies both ways. And that's the funny thing, man. Questions come from different directions, and sometimes one answer actually answers multiple domains, even though they're different places or spaces or points of view. Meta conversations.
Whatever happens was meant to happen.
James, do you know, because this is well, one of the funders of this is Jack Dorsey, Noster, I'm talking about, sorry. And has he used it for Blue Sky, his new social media platform?
Ooh, I don't know. Let's look that up.
I just got the impression that Blue Sky was just another centralized effort, but actually maybe it's got some underlying, at least interoperability with that schema.
Oh, it says he's splitting time between the two.
I just found something on Decrypt. Blue Sky is actually a proof of concept front end to the underlying AT protocol, which is intended to form the basis of a broad network. Nostr is comparable to the AT protocol and is a framework under which more than a dozen apps and other services already operate.
There's our friend Stephen Wolfram referenced here.
Gets about.
Interesting. So the AT protocol. Okay. Yeah, I wonder how similar these are. That's really interesting.
Hmm.
But I mean, it's funny. It's funny just how different the messaging is, like going back to this statement right here versus this one, join the wait list
Yeah.
versus, hey, here's something that might work.
Yeah, maybe there's a confidence comes from centralization.
You don't say.
You get an echo chamber that reinforces your your marketing spiel. You get more and more confident with your branding, and then you hit into decentralized, and it's like, might work.
But right, they're comprehensively integrating DIDs in a way that Noster is not directly. So that's really cool. This is, all right, does anybody want to add the AT protocol to a summer exploration?
Mhm.
For anybody who remembers some of the early playground sessions at Gimbalabs, Kyle Johns used to have a lot more time to spend with us. But he started Cardano Sharp and was able to make it out here for the workshop last week. And he and I were talking Friday morning about DIDs and the whole. He was pretty inspired by the need to really kind of take some next steps thinking about DIDs, and has been thinking about, what's a general role that a .NET library like Cardano Sharp might play more generally for non.NET native developers. And so he's been thinking about this for the last few days, and we've been sending some notes back and forth. But that's another thing I would like to explore. Is DID resolution.
One thing that came up in a previous playground session that I keep thinking I should go back and look at was the game changer file system, which I'm curious about.
Here's what we'll do. Cool. And going back to just the concept of open spaces, this is exactly what the beginning of an open space conference is like, is you just gather a bunch of people and just slowly keep throwing some ideas out there. And some people call it an unconference too. I just love the concept of open spaces and have seen it work really well at very large scales. So thank you for just joining this opportunity to just throw ideas on the table. Some of these we'll get to over the next few months and some maybe not. What else? Any other ideas you've been knocking around and thinking about eventually getting to? Cool. Well, for next week, I was thinking about just maybe jumping into this one. Like I said, it was the first thing that came to my mind. I think it's been on my to-do list for like 8 months, but it's good to wait because it's better than it was 8 months ago. So just to model this, what I would do now is I could grab this card and just pull it down here. Whoop, there we go. It's official. Look, next Tuesday, there's just going to be a nice little session where a bunch of people who don't know what they're doing get together and try to get Hydra to work.
Is that the same link that I have in my calendar, the Gimbalabs link? Or-
This one is.
Okay.
Yeah, this one right here happens to be, but I think it's worth it. Just plan on it, make a note to yourself, maybe just to double check either the Miro board or that gimbalabs.com/summer or whatever it is, Carnival 2023.
Mhm.
And there's a Dali generated image of a carnival at dusk on the Gimbalabs homepage that I used for this. I'm not sure what everybody's policy is on using that kind of art, but felt like it was kind of fun to use it for this. Q.
I think everybody's being a little bit shy. I know I would like to add Mithril on there, figure out how that works in regards to DREPs. It's my understanding that a DREP will be using Mithril to sign their certificates and or votes. Atala Prism, also another interesting thing to add on to there. Hydra Demeter, everything from TX pipes. And with this space being static or stationary, for people that are working on some of these things throughout the week or not during this specific time slot, what's the best way to report back? Include in a session or a lesson. What happens here, is what was meant to happen. There's 6 other days with 22.5 hours times however many people are involved. Yeah. So what's the process on that?
Excellent.
What are the thoughts?
Yeah, I think those are, I just threw two ideas I heard here. I think, just reading Mithril docs and talking that through, looking at some of the TX pipe services. For example, one thing I've been meaning to do is just play with their Ogmios as a service, just to see how efficient we can make it to use that instance. And there might be some things that we run into there. But in terms of accountability, there's no plan by design for two reasons. One is, I'll just say the more practical one first. For there to be accountability and sharing out takes administrative work. And I don't have time to do that administrative work this summer. So if anybody wants to create and communicate a plan for what people might share out of these sessions, or at least to communicate avenues for sharing that stuff out, I would be so grateful for the help. But also reason number two, I don't think, I'm not sure we need another avenue of accountability. So I recognize the need to make sure that work that happens isn't for nothing, that it's communicated. But I also know that deep ideation happens when it's just happening for its own sake. And I really wanted to emphasize that part as we go through this experience. So again, no rules, very open to anybody just stepping in, add whatever you want to this board. Anybody watching this video later, use any other section of this Miro board. We're using just the tiny center of it. But feel free to add notes about what you did. If there's something you want the world to see, feel free to add it here. But the point of this is to really maximize time for learning and building, but not to create additional administrative work. But we'll see. We'll see how messy this board gets over the summer. Who knows what's going to happen? We'll see if there's ways to start connecting these different spaces. Q.
Yeah, I dropped a comment in the chat. 2 weeks ago on a Monday, we were on Cardano over coffee, and the 42 epoch came up, and the struggle of branding and naming things. I would mention the Cardano Carnival. I'm so sorry. The caravan, and then the caravan turned into what I believe you had said was space trains. Yeah, and I was been trying to find the right time or place to ask you for that link again.
I've got you. Notice that we're talking spaces here. And notice that with just a little bit of dragging and dropping, I could make these things, I could line these up in a straight line, and then you can start connecting them. And that's really what a space train is, right? So at a really high level, I think a lot of us are informally familiar with the concept of spaces, right? We share spaces with friends and loved ones, right? And we can build community spaces that feel similar, and that's all well and good. But how do you communicate beyond spaces, right? If we here happen to trust each other, and there's 13 other people in a space over there who happen to trust each other, but there's no overlap, what kind of innovative ways do we have for building upon these two instances of localized trust and then connecting between them? If we were able to make those connections, we might have what we could call a space train. Right. Let me go get that link, and I'll add that YouTube link to this Miro board because it's really good. It's a video called Rebuilding Society on Meaning. by a guy named Joe Edelman, who has done a lot of work with some of the guys who made the social dilemma. Was that the name of the documentary about social media? Yeah, the social. So he's in those circles. And early this year, he published a lecture called Rebuilding Society on Meaning. I'm just going to find it here. Here we go. But I think we can, here we go. And at about a little bit before the 1 hour mark, he arrives at the concept of space trains. So you can skip ahead until you just hear him say that. But it's a 90-minute lecture. I think it was worth it. I felt like it was time well spent. And he just lays out his description of a problem, lays out some technical constraints on what we might work with, and then finally arrives at this concept of space trains near the end. So I'll just float this out over here so people can discover it. But yeah, as the summer goes on and as we keep creating spaces, a great question that will emerge is, okay, yeah, how do we link these things, right?
Thank you very much.
Matthew, thanks for dropping by. Hey.
Hey, thanks. Sorry, I had a fiat meeting run over and couldn't jump in at 2. So
All good. All good. We threw you on here already with the message from Discord yesterday, and as a proposer.
Yeah.
But I'll give you a quick recap of what we're doing here. If you've ever heard of open spaces, we're basically just running a big open spaces for the next 3 months. And we've got the time 1800 UTC blocked as a start time with no specified end time, because sometimes people might get into a session and keep going because they're learning a lot together. But the concept here is that anybody can come, propose a topic. These are just some guiding questions. It could be about a tool, a question, an experiment. Provide a space to meet, any kind of link you want to share, to give people interested in that topic a space to get together. You don't have to set a date immediately, but when you're ready, you can drag one of these cards down to one of these date boxes below. And then just we ask that if somebody does propose a topic, they add their name to the proposer box. Proposers don't have to be facilitators. So if you don't want to facilitate the session you're proposing, you can leave that box blank and maybe somebody else will pick it up. And when people are interested, they can add their names to these sticky notes here. So what I just described briefly is once again outlined in the how it works. There's a bunch of empty cards and other cards that we've started to fill out above. And the hypothesis is that over the course of the next few months, we'll just start placing these in time. And on a given Tuesday, there might be one or more sessions for people to drop into together to learn and build stuff together. So far, so good. Does that high level description make sense?
How do we access the mural board? Is there a link in the Discord?
Great. Okay, so there is a link in the Discord. It's in the Playground channel because this is replacing Playground for the summer. And then we have at gimbalabs.com. This is probably the best URL as a starting place. So it kind of gives an overview of what I just described. I'm dropping in the chat now. Gimbalabs/Carnival-2023. The quick overview, a meeting link to this main room, and then down below the Miro board are all linked in the same place. Anybody else think, like, if you're thinking about a concept, but not sure if you should say it, the answer is yeah, you should definitely say it. Throw it out there. What's the worst idea you have in your mind right now? Well, I mean, don't go all the way there, but like maybe part way.
Embedding Miro to a website.
Was that a bad idea?
I mean, not a bad one, but it's probably it's a great one, and it's probably a lot easier to do than I think it is. But
It
I
was
love the way it looks.
gratuitous, but if you can, you should, right?
I think so.
Yeah, you got the idea. Nice. All
Hey,
right.
here we go.
So there we go. Yeah, so next week, at least one session, we're just gonna read the Hydra docs and see how much we can get it to work in a couple hours. It'll just be a public space. And yeah, the week after that, I would love to attend this session. I'm in. So this is June 27th. And yeah, the concept. So coming up 2 weeks from now, we can build upon what we might already understand about transaction building, but think about this question. Hey, look, the hash of the next UTXO, it's deterministic. You can know it before the transaction is confirmed on chain. So what can we do to chain in time a series of transactions together? I think that's a great question. On my personal calendar, I'm gonna just block about 3 hours starting from 1800 UTC on Tuesdays, but not gonna try to fill time for 3 hours. I'm just making sure I have that time blocked in case a space is fun and productive and not gonna have anywhere else to go. But for today, that was really my whole agenda, was just to introduce this idea, get it out there. If you know anybody who would like to participate in spaces like this, just make sure to connect to your network, let people know. Gimbalabs will just keep tweeting about it each week and share a little screenshot of what's going to be live that particular Tuesday, something like this. But for today, that's what I've got. So thank you for starting this experiment together. I'm happy to stick around for any other questions or thoughts anybody has. But otherwise, I think we're ready to go for next week. Any closing thoughts?
No, thank you, James, for doing this. The Gimbalabs stuff has taught me a lot. So I really appreciate what you guys have been doing for years now. Learned a lot about making transactions, just basic stuff from you guys, from the YouTube videos you would do just years ago. It's good, still good content.
Thanks, man.
How do you edit how do I add the link to the space? Oh, here we go.
You gotta I think it might be like a triple click. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Thanks.
Yeah. Can it be this big?
Oh, it's fine. Yeah, we could just change the font size.
Yeah.
If you there should be like a little text editor here. I'll show on my screen. Like you can see the font size up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks good. Perfect. Thanks. Yeah, and spread the word about that stuff too. You know, it's one of the pain points I experience is of trying to show people some really essential stuff to build up a mental model about how Cardano works, but people getting stuck in the idea that they are not a developer. And I still don't know how to really break through that barrier. And I think this is going to be a years-long process, but it's my experience that non-devs benefit greatly just from building up their mental model of what a UTXO is. And that's why to communicate stuff about building transactions. If you're a seasoned dev, you'll figure out how to do that on your own, fine, right? But I think that a lot of us can just give shape to our ideas better if we just understand a little bit more about technically what's happening, which is not the same thing as writing code. Not everybody has to write code, right? But I think for the, you know, for these new systems to work, we've all had the experience of explaining people, you know, what their mnemonics are, and people, we're all used to people looking at us like we're crazy when we say, yeah, these magic words, they're really important, keep them a secret, right? But I think we can do the same thing with each other when it comes to, okay, here's what a UTXO is. Here's what a validator is. Just get those concepts, sleep on those concepts for a couple of weeks, and tell me what your brain does. You know, tell me what kind of new ideas you're going to have. Cool. Well, I'm really excited about this. I'm really excited to carve out time for deep work when work is happening over the next few months, and really excited to kind of bridge the gap between deep work time and this kind of time together. Those things can sometimes be mutually exclusive, but I don't think they have to be. So excited to see where we go next. All right. It says here that at least Seb, Session, Steve, Faizan, and me are getting together next week. But I'll blast this out. We'll see who else shows up, and we'll see how much we can embarrass ourselves trying to get Hydra to work. Until then, have a good one. See you, everybody.